Our topic right here is going to be redos, retakes, and late work. And hopefully some of the topics on the affinity matrix got you thinking a little bit about some of these. And I'll explain how we're going to guide this discussion in a minute. I want you to read those quotes though at the top, if you could. One from Rick Wormley said the idea that you can get away with turning in work in the late world, in the real world, mister, isn't true. Flights are delayed every day, cars are a little bit late as the day progresses. With no penalty. If I don't pay my mortgage on time, I have to pay the late fee. So if I continue not to pay the mortgage, the bank will foreclose on my house. So obviously late penalties do come into play sometimes in the real world. I don't know where you guys stand on this today, but maybe our discussion will reveal a little bit about what your thoughts are on those topics. What we have is two different scenarios or thoughts that I'd like to go through in a second. But first I want to kind of pass this out too. We want to make sure that our discussion is productive, and so what I've kind of devised is a way that everyone will get an opportunity to speak at some point, and share their thoughts. So when we go, I'm going to take a volunteer for the first one, somebody that feels passionate about that topic and wants to talk, but you're going to have 3 minutes to share whatever you do in your classroom. After that, you have to be quiet, let the other people at the table ask you questions about what you just said. If they have them, they don't understand something you said, and then you can answer those. And then lastly, speaker 1 just is quiet. The rest of the group shares their opinions based off of what you said. So that way you can all participate in this discussion. So the first thought on your paper is to ask how many teachers you know had to take the practice more than once, and when they finally passed the test, were they allowed only half or 3/4 of their salary of the other teachers? How many people fail the driving test, the DMV, for the first time, and when they pass, are they only allowed to drive in the right lane 35 miles per hour? Do they have reduced privileges? I think you get the point that thought's probably trying to make. But what I want to know is under what circumstances in your classrooms do you allow students to either retake assessments or redo assignments? Do you award full credit for them, and why or why not? So we'd like somebody that does that.
You guys feel passionately in more talk. Okay, I'll talk. So I let my students retake and redo whatever they want to retake and redo. I say if you do poorly on something, that first of all I won't give them lower than a 50. Even if they get like 20% on a quiz, I'm just going to put a 50 in the grade book. But I'll let them retake and redo whatever they want to do. The thing is, they have to show that initiative. I don't say on every other Tuesday or every other Thursday I'm going to do retakes for this quiz or redos for this essay or whatever. Especially with things like essays. You know, as an English teacher, essays need one-on-one help. If you're really struggling, you can't just have all of, listening with a group of people. You need one-on-one. So I'll let them do whatever they want, but my only issue with that is that my students very rarely show the initiative. And they know that it's offered, and me, myself, and my co-teacher remind them all the time, if you're not happy with this, come see either one of us. There's 2 of us who will let you do it again, and our kids don't take advantage of that opportunity. And I'll let them do it, and I'll give them full credit. I won't take off points for lateness, for a test or whatever. I will be completely willing to do that, but
Okay, you doesn't have to go the whole 3 minutes. Questions for Katie? She just said how that works in the classroom.
anything, absolutely anything. If you do poorly on a quiz, you can completely retake it. If you do poorly on a test, you can retake it. If you're not happy with your essay grade, you can redo it.
Do they have to come for tutoring or so?
I would just
say,
yeah, I would just ask them to come after school and see me after school and say, or see me or Christina, my co-teacher, see one of us and kind of go over it with us and take it from there.
That's my take on it. Initially, hard time.
Well, if it's something like a test or a quiz, I want them to do it while I'm watching them. If it's a test or quiz, yeah. If it's an essay, I've really never run into that. I guess I would let them take it home, but I wonder how much it would improve. You know what I mean? Some of those nitty-gritty grammar rules, they don't necessarily, we don't even understand, so.
Full credit.
And it can be I mean, it can be like a little classwork assignment, like an exit ticket, or it can be like a major essay. I don't, if they want help, I'm there to help them.
Is the bonus for the initiative on the students? If you go to the student and say, I'm going to be after school today.
The initiative's on the student, so they need to look at it and say, wow, I got 22% on this test. I probably should talk to my teacher about that. And I think it's important for them to take that initiative to show that they care.
Do they know that 22 has gone and that's 50?
They know that because it's set in my class expectations, and they sign those.
I mean, still not good. I was just wondering.
Well, sometimes I don't know if they're fully cognizant of it, because we'll put the 20% or whatever on the top of their quiz or test and just put the 50 in the grade book. So I think students that are especially conscientious and see that, they're going to see like, oh, I got a 20 on this, but just put in a 50. And again, because it's something that I set forth in my expectations, we tell them that, but it's not like we remind them of that all the time. You know what I mean? It's uncomfortable because if a kid works their butt off and gets a 50, and then a kid, doesn't study and gets a 20, but I put a 50 in the grade book, I don't want to have the whole conversation of like, well, I worked really hard and got a 50, and they're just getting a 50 even though they didn't do the same work that I did. You know what I mean?
At this point, thoughts on Katie's practice, what you think about what she does? Do you have any recommendations for her or something similar that you do in your classroom?
The question is just the burden of test, right? Do a lot of people take the opportunity of it, or since there's not that much of an opportunity?
But it can.
Not a big burden.
What if it did?
One of the things I do to try to reduce the burden a little bit is I do the replacement gradings with your summative assessments. So if it's like a daily quiz that they do very poorly on, if they're absent or I will let that next major assessment from the same year override that previous grade. So that way I'm not, if a kid misses a daily quiz and it's in the first 5 minutes of class, I'm just targeting or doing the step announcements or for whatever reason it was, the burden. This lessens your burden on making everything be redone. So I do that a lot. It allows, a lot of times kids can't stay for school as much as you want, or they're making up a daily quiz when they could be studying and practicing. It's a little bit more useful with their time. But if the burden isn't, there's not that many people taking the options. That's one thing I've done to try to alleviate some of the stress on their part too, because they'll freak out if you miss a daily quiz and also the next 2 days that's all they're talking about. You're like, just get back on board. You're absent. You already have enough to worry about trying to catch up on the material. Let's not worry about that 5-minute exit test question that's in your grade book.
Homework, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to say, this year I'm trying to do the summative assessments where if we have Unit 1 and a kid gets a 50 on it, I include material from Unit 1 on Unit 2. If they do better, then I'll replace the Unit 1 grade with the Unit 2 grade. And then, let's say they get a 50 to 60 on the Unit 2, and then Unit 3 they get a 75, and I'll replace Unit 1 and Unit 2 with a 75 because it's including material all the way for the cumulative. But one interesting thing that's come up with one of the students asked me just the other day is, so Mr. Jacobs, if I do really well on the second one and then I bomb the third one, will you count my second one for the first and the third? And I'm like, no.
Content. It's not the same content.
Well, yeah, and that's right, because it is cumulative, and so I need to hold you accountable for 3 as well. And if you're showing me that now you're accountable for 1, 2, and 3, then I'll go back and change it. But you can't just rock the first one or the second one and then blow off the other ones. But they're quick to try to.
What do you do with that student that does poorly on the third one after doing well on the first and second in relation to retakes or redoing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's probably going to come down to time. I mean, I would, we haven't got there yet, and this is the first year I'm doing it, so I'm thinking, man, that unit test is probably, there's not going to be much time after before the 9 weeks is over. Will he or she have a chance to retake that? I don't know.
Will you provide remediation in between?
for the mistakes that they've made? Yeah, we do, and it's doing it on a group basis, but also individual. I mean, if they want to come back after school, but during the class period, we're going through it and we're talking about why we missed this and how we can analyze it, in a different way. And one of the struggles that I've had is that, should I repeat the material word for word? Like if I've given them this document to analyze, do they see that one again? The exact same one. And so what I'm doing is I'm mixing it up. Like I'll include, if I had 3 short answer questions, I'll include 1 that's a total repeat, 2 that's a repeat of the content, but not the exact same question. So I think I just completed the Unit 2 test, and I think some of them were a little bit upset because they were thinking that this was going to be the exact same test all over again. But in terms of the Unit 1 stuff, it was all there. But
That's something that Rick warmly talks about, is you can change the assignment. It's not intended to be, if you just get as many cracks at the same test over and over again until eventually you score a higher grade. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, does he do that, or does he
Talks
change
about
it up?
change it up.
He talks to change it up, yeah.
Well, interestingly, I worked with a teacher last year that had a 5-question warm-up, and it was a map. So they would review the warm-up, and so they had 3 warm-ups one week and then 1 the following. Then on that last Friday, she took the exact same problem. She picked 10 problems out of the possible 30 or 40, whatever they had. Did the exact same problems and gave it to them as a quiz grade. And you would be surprised at the number of students that did not do well.
Yeah.
I mean, and the warm-up was, here are the problems, try them on your own. Okay, we're going to do them together.
Right.
And so she worked through them, gave them the correct answers, did the exact same. It was a cut and paste.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised at the number of students that didn't do well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it becomes a character issue, too, in terms of character education, because I'm like, guys, the worst feeling in the world is this. If you see this question again and you've already missed it, and now you're missing it again, I mean, what is that saying about your work ethic? What is that saying about, your study habits? I mean, who you are? I mean, I try to take it to that level, but you're right. It is surprising how they still will not fix it.
Okay, just to stay on track, I'd like to get some thoughts on the second part of this as well. So this is a little bit different topic. I don't know how people feel about late work in relation to intakes, but ask how many teachers have ever turned in their classroom expectations, their grades, or other forms requested by the administration late. When they did, were they reprimanded with a letter in their personnel file, or were they suspended without pay? The question is, what is your stance on allowing students to turn work in late? Do you award full credit or partial credit? What limitations do you place on students turning work in late? And we have a different volunteer other than Katie to start off about what you might do in your own practice with this, or what you might like to try to do.
So the only thing, I mean, if it's a big assessment, quiz or test, I mean, there's no way they haven't started it yet. They're absolutely going to make up policies to make sure they're ready for it. So there's the only thing that can be turned in late for me would be defined as formative assessments, whether they're homeworks or classworks that I'm just checking over. And for me, those are, the city says 10% for homework. I actually throw all my formative assessments under that, just kind of class participation goal. And I am pretty punishing when it comes to whether that stuff is late or not. After a couple days late, it's done. It's going in as a 50, and I'm not, it's over. But what I'm not a fan of is that is not really a measure of how well they're doing. It's a measure of how they're participating in my class. And so in the end, what I actually end up doing is I run their grades twice. I run their grades with only the 90% graded, throwing out all the homeworks and classwork, throwing all the formative assessments, and I run that list. And whatever that score is, when I look at it in comparison to it with that 10% in, if it's better, I override it. And I throw out all of their homeworks and all of their formative assessments.
That's really generous.
But I mean,
Really generous.
for me, my belief is I am here to test. In the end, I'm here to test your mastery of the content. And checking homework does not test mastery of content. For me, I'm checking to see whether you did it. I'm not grading it. If I do grade it, I'm only grading it for their own, knowledge of whether they're doing well or not. Most of the time, I'm just doing a courtesy check and then saying, go to Edmodo and look up the answers online if you're not sure if you got them right or not, because I can't go over all 20 of them, or all 15 of them, or all 10 of them. So for me, in the end, it is about how they perform in a sit-down environment for that summative piece. And so I look at that last 10% and say, did it hurt them or did it help them? And it's real easy because all I have to do is look at that in one grading category. If it's lower than their grade, it's hurting them. If it's higher than their grade, it's helping them. So I just got to run it for those 4 or 5 kids. And so for me, when I'm looking at this, I agree that it's green, but for me, I don't want it to count against them. So I kind of use that as a buffer to ensure that I'm not grading them for going through my hoops. If I tell them that you need to learn how to factor a quadratic, I don't care if they go home and go to Khan Academy and figure it out on their own, and they walk into me and say, I don't like the way you teach, give me my homework. if they can pull that off, congratulations. Now, 99% of kids can't do that, because they need you, but I do kind of really believe in the idea that I'm there to, I want to grade that so they get the habits, because a lot of them aren't self-regulated enough to do it on their own. And for us, I would say well over 90% of the students, it always helps them. But
You're trying to just a little bit stay onto the late piece. Questions for Thomas here about what he talked about with his practices.
Do you have a time limit on when the late work can come in? Like, is it like a week?
what I used to do was I would do a letter grade for the first day, and then usually the first week, for about a week, I would accept it. I would usually get 50% off, is kind of where my, so it's at that point. Because I don't think at that point you can show that with that extra amount of time, to me, being above average you're not above average. It took me 2 years. So to give them a B or an A, to me, would indicate that, I was like, that's not above average work. You did it late. Even if it was excellent, it's late. So for me, it was kind of that idea. I don't care how perfect it is. If it's a month beyond what it's supposed to be, you're getting a C. Now, obviously, like I said, for major or anything worth 30-40% of your grade, I'm not making those stipulations. I'm doing retakes and redos and all those wonderful things as well. But for these little formative pieces, the 10-20%, small part of my grade book, I tend to be a little bit more harsh on the business.
I don't know, I just look at this and like turning in things late or doing something late, getting a letter in your personal file is like the last thing that happens. That's a severe consequence. And when you do things late, you are reprimanded. And if you turn in your grades late over and over, then you are reprimanded by your administrator. So I look at this example and I'm just kind of like, well, I don't get suspended without pay, no, but I do get reprimanded if I do something late.
So how can that relate to grading practices with students? So if a student turns in one assignment late, it's their first time all year, how is that different than the other student who's chronically late on assignments all the time? How would your policy?
I mean, I take off points for late work because I think that we have to encourage responsibility. And I think it's really important that we encourage responsibility in the classroom. So I take off 10 points per day late. I won't give you lower than a 50. I'll take it up until the end of the quarter. So I'm taking things, 2 months late sometimes, but I'll do that. But I'm going to take points off for lateness because I really firmly believe we have to have some sort of responsibility in the classroom. We're trying to make these kids citizens and fully functional members of society in 2 or 3 years, and I don't know.
But is the grade the right way? I would say well over half my kids doesn't. It's like telling them 30% late. How effective? Does it seem to be making people turn stuff in on time?
Yeah, some kids, and they'll make a really big effort. Because I take off per day late, not per class period. So all the kids really make that effort to let me and Christina down the day in between so that they get a 90, not an 80. Several kids have done that this year. They've actually been really good about turning it in on time, but then they bring it in the next day. But I don't know. I just feel like we have to have some level of that accountability. It's taking the accountability off the student by saying you can turn it in whenever you want to turn it in. Like that's making them not accountable.
we kind of transitioned into the discussion piece. Other thoughts off of what either Tom or Katie said in relation to late work? Do you agree that in the real world, sometimes turning in stuff late is okay, sometimes it's not? Should the policies change and be different from, you know, a student doing it 1 or 2 times versus somebody that does it all the time?
I think the examples up here, turning things in late and everything, like the flights being delayed and the cars not being fixed, like that has to do with like people, you know, as far as like dealing with other people, interaction with people, versus you paying your mortgage, like that is a set in stone type of thing. Like, so you not paying your mortgage or like paying your light bill, like that's and it's kind of difficult to transition either both of those things into homework because you're still dealing with people. You're still dealing with, you know, them and taking responsibility because you wanted it on time. You wanted them to have some kind of knowledge getting on time. But it's very difficult when you, okay, you know, the dentist is running late. Yes, he's running late, but you're dealing with the person's teeth, you know? So it's like, it's a lot of delicateness when you're dealing with people versus if you're just paying a mortgage, you know? So I'm still having a hard time grasping, like, yes, I do believe, no, exactly, I still think there should be, you know, some kind of responsibility for that, but it's kind of a thing of, we run late all the time. We have stuff that pops up or something that, you know, needs assistance, and just like the kids have stuff, you know, that pops up and things happen to them, and, you know, so they're, overall you're still dealing with people, but it's also a thing of, you know, you can get a second chance, but it comes with a late fee, or it comes with probation, or it comes with like, so the lateness overall will eventually catch up with you. The doctors will stay late. The people will not have them come back and get service again. They won't use that flight anymore if they're continuously late. So it'll eventually catch up with you, and that's the thing that they don't get overall, is because we give them, you know, we take off a little bit or we take off a whole lot. Eventually, those lateness will catch up with you because you're, you know, so that's what I think with that overall. Like, you're still dealing with people, but eventually it will catch up with you.
Okay, well that kind of makes sense. That kind of makes sense.
I mean, I also think, like, I know I'm talking too much about this, but I also think that in terms of, like, your mortgage, you can, well, I don't know, but I know, like, for college loans, you can call your college loan company and say, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to pay, can I defer? And you make arrangements ahead of time to do things late. If a student comes to me and says, hey, my mom's having surgery, going to a funeral, going to be out of town, then they arrange ahead of time, then they can turn it in late for full credit. You know what I mean? And I think that we do that in the real world, and kids can do that in the classroom too.
Is that something students know they can do when there's something's happening to them, and you put that out there?
In my expectations, yeah.
Yes, it's in our experience.
In our expectations, yeah.
We tell them all the time it's like a job. If you know you're going to be late, or if you know, you either get your best cough voice on, or you say, okay, or you find somebody to cover your shift. So we tell them, hey, if insinuating circumstances happen, and we've had a couple of those. Hey, you know, mom and dad have been having. Okay, well, great. Well, when do you think you can get it done? I'm gonna need this weekend. Okay, great. We'll give you this weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And then on Monday, boom, it's in there because they felt comfortable coming to you and telling you that personal thing, and you gave them extended time. So I think that once again, it's back to dealing with, you know, with people. Eventually, those late things, you can't always take advantage of it, but you have to still, you know, kind of still walk that line of getting stuff in on time, turning things in, making sure everything is right. There are those exceptions, but those exceptions cannot be a normal anymore. Like,
Gotcha, I appreciate that. On the back of this paper right here, I just want to show you, this is not something we're going to go over right here, but it's for you to take with you. These are not things that we're pushing for anybody to try. These are just things that are out there. The majority of these were taken, work done by Rick Wormley or Ken O'Connor in relation to these topics. And it's just for you to review and think, would I consider doing any of these things, like in my practice? Is it different than what I do? Or maybe you completely disagree and you don't want to try this. As we stated kind of at the beginning of this session, part of our goal is to find out where our faculty and our teachers, you guys being a sample size of that, are are willing maybe to take some steps in some of the directions where they think grading practices are going anyway.
I get that already.
So I do want you to take those. We'll follow up with a little bit of some resources that you guys can use as well. And I hope you will, with an open mind, look at all of these and just take them on their own merit, debate them with yourself for a little while, play with them, advocate with the ones you don't agree with, see which ones kind of make sense to you, and if they do, consider putting them into practice in your classrooms, and certainly let us know if you could which ones that you're going to try going forward.
I mean, it's at some point in this process.
So I appreciate that. I think the other groups will probably get close to wrapping up, and we just got one quick final thing. Appreciate you guys coming in. Yes.
Put your stickers. You want me to turn around?